Welcome to a Legendarium special about Tanchelm of Antwerp, a terrifying medieval heretic and cult leader. It seems that no one cared much about Tanchelm until he challenged the power of the medieval church. We know little about Tanchelm's early life, save that he was born around the year 1070 and lived near Antwerp. He became a monk and quietly lived, worked, and prayed. He supposedly traveled to Rome at one point, but this is not known for certain. Early descriptions of Tanchelm described the monk as a humble and pious man whom most admired. Tanchelm served in Antwerp, then enduring a moral crisis because its only priest openly lived with a prostitute. Unsurprisingly, anti-church feeling grew strong among the people of Antwerp, even among some churchmen. Around the year 1112, Tanchelm began delivering blistering sermons against the priest. He insisted that sacraments meant nothing if given by sinful hands. He also preached that people did not have to pay church tithes, since too much of that went to supporting the lavish lifestyles of certain churchmen. As the local church failed to act against Tanchelm, he grew bolder and condemned the church he long served as a pseudo-Christian fraud, as Luther would 400 years later. He won a vast following in Antwerp, especially women from the urban poor and peasantry. It seems that his personal magnetism drew them in as much as his preaching, and perhaps that brought about a change in the humble monk. If Tanchelm stopped with calls for church reform, he might have been remembered as a great reformer. Instead, Tanchelm suddenly declared himself to be God incarnate. He took 12 apostles in imitation of Jesus Christ and surrounded himself with armed bodyguards who followed him wherever he traveled. Since he outraged the church, that might have been a wise move. For his next stunt, Tanchelm declared that he would marry the Virgin Mary. But since the Virgin Mary did not appear to be available, his followers wed him to a statue of the Virgin Mary in a solemn ceremony. Next, Tanchelm demanded that his followers give him and the statue wedding gifts. He laid out 2 coffers and declared, "Let us see whether men or women bear me greater love." Men and women then raced to fill their respective coffer with coins and jewels. So much for his condemnation of church tithes. To thank his followers for their generosity, Tanchelm took a bath and then passed out cups of his used bath water for them to drink. It seems they believed that drinking the bath water would cleanse them of sins, a new sacrament for this new church. For the next several years, Tanchelm preached up and down the coast of the modern-day Netherlands, especially in Utrecht, Brabant, and even northern France. The area had been a hotbed of earlier heresies in past generations, mainly led by charismatic peasants who preached against corrupt churchmen, but now a churchman preached against the church. On some occasions, his sermons prompted his followers to invade churches, vandalize sacred statuary, assault priests, and destroy communion loaves, which they judged unfit for Christians to eat. This, in turn, led the church faithful to take revenge against the heretics, chasing them into the streets and beating them. Finally, the Archbishop Frederick of Cologne moved against Tanchelm. The church briefly arrested him around 1114, but he did not remain in prison for long. In time, Tanchelm fled from his home in a ship, likely to avoid angry churchmen. He did not succeed. While on board, a priest attacked Tanchelm and beat him to death, then chopped his head off during the year 1115, only 3 years after he started preaching. His sect endured for a few years longer. However, the local bishop Burchard of Cambrai invited a church evangelist named Saint Norbert of Xanten to the area. Over the next decade, Saint Norbert won most of the heretics back to the church with his frequent sermons. His plain living and rejection of luxury did much to win back former followers of Tanchelm, and in time, the church canonized him. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.